Welcome back, movie fans, to another episode of The Movie Date with Rob and Matt, a podcast for people who like movies but don't want to be smug about it, too smug about it. You can be a little smug about it. I am Rob.
I'm Matt, and we do get a little smug sometimes.
Yeah, it's okay. It's
You
like,
can't help it.
It's like slow-mo in movies, like we said.
Yes.
It's best used sparingly to accent a very critical, action-y type moment.
That is.
But the more you use it, the less impressive it is.
That is beautifully defined.
Yeah.
For pretentiousness and smugness, it's good as a smattering.
Are there
but
exceptions to that rule
for
slow-mo? Because there's some movies that use it a lot. Like The Matrix uses it quite heftily, and I don't think it ever gets boring.
It never gets boring because it was also one of the first movies to really do that.
Yeah.
When you're kind of the groundbreaker, it's sort of. I mean, obviously, you want to pull slow-mo off when you're showing speed, like when one of the agents is shooting at Neo and he does the lean back and swimming in air motion. That's to show like, yeah, bullets are really fast, but now he can dodge them.
Yeah.
And that of course was an iconic shot.
Yeah, like a Flash or Quicksilver scene has to have a lot of that.
Yes.
As well.
As we talked
But
about.
a lot of that's not even slow-mo. A lot of that's like they run around or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and they're moving at mostly regular-ish speed of some sort.
They're moving regular
and
speed
but
for
everyone
them.
else is just like still.
Right.
Yeah, this feels like a conversation we should have had for Sonic.
But I mean, it's, we were talking about slow-mo and flashbacks in movies and things
Yeah.
like that. And
300 does it well.
I was gonna say, Snyder.
That's the one that I was like. That's the one that I was like. He uses it a lot.
Our
in that
best
movie,
friend
and
in
it
this
works.
podcast, Zack
Yes.
Snyder, uses it for aesthetic purposes. It's dramatic purposes.
Yeah, except for like Man of Steel, which has zero slow-mo. at
I guess
all.
he was going for that because someone like Chris Nolan, who was producing on it,
Yeah.
doesn't really use slow motion.
Yeah, BVS only has 2 shots,
Mm-hmm.
so that's pretty. Yeah, it's very uncharacteristic of him. He's so. I was listening to another podcast about it, and they're like, "This movie is very subdued with regards to Zack Snyder slow mo," and I was like, "Yeah, it is, isn't it?"
I think sometimes slow mo can be used for comedic effect because one of my favorite comedy movies recently, it's on Netflix right now, is Death of Stalin.
Yeah, you told me about that.
Yes, and there's a sequence where Jason Isaacs plays a famous Soviet general. I forgot the man's name, but he was a real
chef or something.
Oh
He's not
no,
a
it was,
general,
it was,
is he?
no. Super Shimmy plays Khrushchev, but Jason Isaacs plays this guy. And in the first time we see him introduced, every time a new character shows up, they slow the footage down and like give him a title and everything and dramatic music.
Like Suicide Squad or something.
Yeah, Zukov. And the first time we see this, Jason Isaacs just throws back his coat and is just covered with medals. And it's just like, sorry. And it's very funny.
Nice. Anyway, that's enough talking about slow-mo. We have a special, not a special, we have a regular movie that we've seen that we're going to talk about.
A pretty recent one, so we're getting back to kind of
I
bare
saw it way
bones.
before Matt did. We're talking about the new H.G. Wells Invisible Man
Invisible Man, directed,
by Leigh Whannell of Upgrade fame.
well, and also he's been one of the Blumhouse guys for a long time. He helped do Saw with
James Wan.
James Wan.
Did he direct any of those? 'Cause I thought Upgrade was his first movie.
He wrote Saw, Insidious, Dead Silence, but yeah, he directed the third Insidious.
Oh,
Chapter 3, at least
didn't
that's
know
what it says. So him and
that one's pretty
James
good.
Wan have been partners from the beginning, even all the way back with Saw.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I thought Upgrade was his first movie, but it might have been. I think didn't Chapter 3 come out after that or before that?
Chapter 3 was 2015. Upgrade was 2018.
Okay, yeah. Okay, fair enough.
But it's hard to say because those Insidious movies kind of all just end up sort of Ouroborosing themselves. And
I heard through the grapevine that it was the third one was pretty good. I never have seen any of those movies. And
Insidious still remains one of the worst films I've ever seen.
the first one?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I did. And hey, it's okay to like Insidious. I get why people like it. My experience with it was miserable. And I think that movie is really bad.
Why is it really bad?
Cause
Wasn't it considered one of the best new horror movies?
yeah, it was. And there are moments in it that are great. I'll say that. There are moments in it that are really stand out. It's going for the right stuff, but the editing, the directing, the acting, the writing, the set design, the score, everything is just feels so mediocre to me. I watch it with a group of friends when we were doing a horror movie marathon. We were watching a bunch of horror movies for a whole summer and like rating them on a scale. And all of us walked out agreeing that was an F for us. Now, then, like, Sinister was not that bad.
That's the one with
Ethan Hawke.
Ethan Hawke.
Yeah,
that's the one. It's all right.
Yeah, it's silly too, and this silliness, this kind of taking themselves very seriously, and then having this weird tone is going to come up in my discussion of Invisible Man.
Okay.
We'll save that for later. But yeah, I may need to go watch Insidious again. But I thought it was a retread of Poltergeist, and then just was very. I think it's because I've been so used to internet horror, so a lot of people probably haven't seen that kind of creepiness before.
Yeah.
But it came off just so whatever.
Fair enough.
So yeah, that's a movie I don't like. It's essentially a bad remake of Poltergeist.
You should treat yourself to Upgrade, though.
Yeah, I should. I need to. Upgrade looks a lot of fun.
Yeah,
I don't know why I haven't seen it yet.
It is. It's fun and it's beautifully shot too. It's probably like the nicest looking like horror movie that I've seen in a long time.
And I mean, this movie is also pretty well shot too. But let's get to some movie news before we head off to.
There's only one worth talking about, baby.
Yeah, and that's the
ZS drops the first teaser for Justice League, and
Zacky boy.
We see a harrowing. It's not much. It's 35 seconds.
Well, speaking of horror, it almost feels like a horror trailer.
It's the tone. It feels very much like. There's a couple of like things I tried to glean from it, just from her expression and whatever. Because in the Justice League, the Joss Whedon version, we see Diana when she tells Bruce Wayne about Steppenwolf. We see the history lesson, and she is the keeper of our ancient wisdom and stuff. Which makes me wonder, in Snyder's version, does she know about Darkseid? Does she know what's going on with that? Because she looked like.
If anyone would, she
knows
would.
exactly what that is, and it's very frightening to her. And the tone is very ominous, and we hear that it's the voiceover of Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor talking about Ding Dong, the god is dead and stuff, and they've heard it, the stars and stuff. We see Diana with a torch looking at some ancient murals, and as the camera zooms in, we see at the center of this mural is Darkseid with the 3 mother boxes inside of him or whatever. So, and she looks downright terrified as she looks at it. And then we see a clip of the history lesson that we've seen before, but instead of Steppenwolf standing at the front of this armada, we see from what I understand, a pre-Omega Force Darkseid. So a pre-Darkseid when he's a younger man, a baby, as Zack Snyder says. He's just a baby here, that's what he says.
Dark Seed.
Yeah.
Small side.
Yeah. And I've been watching a bunch of interviews with the actor who plays him, Ray Porter, who is a big Audible or audio books guy and stuff. And it's been really interesting.
He's a voice man.
He is, but he's been in some movies. He's been in a bunch of Star Trek episodes, and he's been in like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia and stuff. You wouldn't look at him, and he talked about how he said something about like I would do anything for Zack Snyder, including like reading a bad teleplay while jumping out of a helicopter or something like that. So
again, that goes to show must be one of the best people to work with in Hollywood.
Yeah, and he talked about how he did scenes with Kieran Hines and stuff, because the rumor was he just did the voice, but no, apparently they put him in the full mocap and stuff.
Whatever it looks like.
They also have cast some more news came out. I think this came out earlier, but they have cast Desaad in the movie, who is Darkseid's torture master, and he's responsible for breaking his prisoners and turning them into his mind slaves, essentially. And Peter Guinness, I think, plays him. And so we talked a little bit about that, and I was like, he talked about the fan reaction to him being cast and how he went to sleep with 300 Twitter followers from audiobook fans, and he woke up with a bunch of people, are you in Zack Snyder's Justice League as Darkseid? And then he had like 4,000 followers, and he sent off an email to Warner Brothers like, I haven't told anybody anything, and I haven't violated my NDA at all.
They're crafty.
And then after they figured it out, he got into the movement, and he would post little teases like, oh, a fan sent me what are those little toys called? The little Funko Pops.
Yeah, Funko Pop.
They sent him a Darkseid and was like, oh, a fan sent me this. Cool. Like just poking the bear. And then finally, when the news broke that his version of Justice League would be coming to HBO Max, he asked Zack Snyder, can I finally go online and tell people? And he was like, yes, of course.
my blessing.
And then he went on Twitter and said, hey, I'm Ray. I play Darkseid in Zack Snyder's Justice League or whatever. And ever since then, he's been on a bunch of podcasts, even ones like small ones that I listen to. They're not really podcasts, like YouTube shows or whatever. He talked about it and how he got into character and like people, because he's a big Shakespeare guy. People were asking him, who would you compare Darkseid to from Shakespeare and stuff? And he talked about like how he sees Darkseid and all these cool things.
Well, as an acting nerd, that sounds really cool.
It's fun.
That sounds really cool.
He was like, I see Darkseid as like one half like Macbeth, a man doomed by tragedy, and
but also a man seeking power.
but also like an elder god, almost like something out of the Tempest or something.
Like an Oberon or something.
And he says like, he's like, as far as bad guys go, Darkseid is like the nuclear option, essentially. And he talks about how
That's a great thought
the best
process.
villains are the ones who they have complete and utter belief in themselves. And he goes, that's Darkseid. He has utter confidence, and the way he said it was like, I'm right and you're wrong. And he goes, that's as much as it comes down to. So I'm excited to see him. I just thought that like when we saw Darkseid in the movie, it was going to be like a man sitting on a chair saying
It was going to be the
nothing.
Thanos situation.
But apparently he has scenes with Kieran Hines.
like
In fact, the way he says is Darkseid has, because I always thought that Steppenwolf in the movie is trying to get away from him, but apparently he is reporting directly to upper management, as it were. So he said there's a scene where he goes, I have words for Steppenwolf or whatever, and it sounds like there's going to be some nice little interactions and stuff, which is good because I didn't want a end of the movie Thanos turns around cameo. I wanted we've already teased him enough in BVS and stuff. I think it's like perfectly fine.
It's all about how they deliver the sequence when he finally reveals himself.
Yeah, and everyone else was like, "Oh, they should have cast a real actor. They should have cast like someone like Josh Brolin or whatever." And he goes, "I am a real actor.
Yeah,
I've been doing this. I was in the Oregon Shakespeare Festival for 18 years. I've been doing audiobooks and I've been doing movies and TV shows. Like I am a real actor." And he talked about how
it's just Snyder knows how to cast. He knows what he wants.
He does have a good. Like, I don't think there's ever been, like, in any of these movies, a person that he cast that I was like, I don't know about that. Maybe Jesse Eisenberg might be the one that comes closest to it, but I still kind of like that interpretation of Lex Luthor. But when
after the BVS extended cut, I like it more.
Yeah, and when I look at, like, people like the members he cast of the Justice League, I'm like, that's spot on. Even, like, when they're atypical. Like, Aquaman is a white blonde dude, but he casts Jason Momoa. And it's perfect. I don't know if you've seen Aquaman yet, but it's worth the time. If you don't like it, you're not fun at parties, is what I say.
Well, I think about, casting for things like that. I go back to Fury Road for casting for Immortan Joe.
What's his name?
He just
it's the
Keynes. I can't remember his full name.
Hughes Burns Keynes.
Yeah, who played Toe Cutter in the first Mad Max.
Yeah,
and is almost exclusively an Australian actor, but he was just like, hey, you want to come back? And they didn't cast a big named guy. Literally, they just cast the guy who's right for the role.
Right,
and it worked.
Right, and there was a little. I think we'll talk about this, and we'll move on. Is Ray Porter, who plays Darkseid, was talking about like how being an actor, there's times where you have to really find the performance, and there's things that are and there's other times when the writing is so great that an idiot could do it and make it amazing. Essentially,
when I was doing acting training, the one thing one of our teachers would always say is to find the text, and then you go through the text. Essentially, your character comes out from the text. You don't downplay it. You find a way to make every word matter. And if the writing is really good,
that's
just
easy.
It's just gonna be. That's why Shakespeare is always great, is because those lines are so good and so empowering and so cool that no matter what, you're just given a free pass. You're just like, here, come up with something neat.
Yeah, and I think there's an old quote by Jerry Seinfeld. Like, the reason I didn't act more is because I ran into people who said I can act, and I found out they actually can. And he goes, it is possible to just show up, read the words, and do a good job. So like, and when he said about Chris Terrio's writing for for Darkseid was that like he was like it felt larger than life, and it was like it's if you're a person who loves Shakespeare, then if you know anything about Jack Kirby when he created the New Gods and when he created this is me talking, not him, when he created the New Gods and stuff, like he just kind of came from Marvel and he was very upset about how he was treated and get royalties for some things that he created, and he had a lot of like a bad taste in his mouth because Jack Kirby is one of the few people like of that era who not only like drew everything but like wrote everything as well. Like he was a writer artist combo, like a Frank Millery person, and he came to DC very frustrated and had this mission in his mind of like, well, so for Marvel, I created like Thor and like their pantheon. It's like I created their gods, so I'm going to create new gods for you, essentially, which is where the term the new gods came from. And he created Darkseid and Steppenwolf and Orion and Highfather and like his own little. It's the most him thing that's ever existed.
He created a mythology.
Yeah,
he created mythology in a world that already has a mythology.
Yeah, and I think it's like his magnum opus. Even like going back and reading some of that '70s stuff, it's a little cheesier than some of the stuff you might read in comics today, but it still holds up. And like talking about like how the family dynamics of a play like King Lear or something play very heavily into like Darkseid. So the thing is like there's two planets and there was New Genesis and there was Apocalypse. And Apocalypse is where the Darkseid people live, and New Genesis is where the nice gods of New Genesis live. And there's Highfather, who's the good one, and there's Darkseid, who's the bad one. And like there's how Darkseid got his power, and he kills his mother and stuff, and kills his father, and
which is very
and they were at war for millennia, and an uneasy peace comes, and what happens to preserve that peace is they take each other's sons and they switch them. So Orion is Darkseid's son, but he is raised on New Genesis and becomes his greatest enemy, essentially. He's also a member. He's on a few episodes of Justice League Unlimited, if you ever see that too.
The cartoon series?
Yes.
That was I don't remember that, but those original Bruce Timm.
Yeah, he's also on episodes of Superman the Animated Series as well.
Yeah,
when you first meet Darkseid by Michael Ironside, you also meet like
such a
Orion and stuff.
I would have been fine with Ironside playing him.
He would have been good. He might be a little too old.
He's old now, but
and then they take Highfather's son is Calabac, who goes to Darkseid and becomes like a savage brute, essentially.
Wow.
Which shows like
that's actually really interesting.
It's extremely
It's a very kind of eye for an eye, very old code, almost like biblical court thing where it's like, oh, you must, in order to make this, you will take my son and I will take your son.
And I remember there's also like there's crazy characters that in his world that shouldn't work but do. Like there's Granny Goodness.
I was gonna say Granny Goodness,
who is his not his torture master, but like usually his master of brainwashing to a degree. There's Desaad, who's his gross evil torture master and stuff. And my personal favorite's the Furies, which is his elite death squad of they're all women, because I don't know if it's ever explicitly stated, but Darkseid has a thing about domineering women. So he likes to there's a character named like Big Barda.
Yes,
who is his?
These characters sound familiar to me.
Yeah. And they
especially like because I remember. I think it was Ed Asner voiced Granny Goodness.
Yes,
in
that's correct.
Yeah,
and he has his own little elite death squad of like these 5. It's your favorite anime trope.
Yeah.
The team of weirdos who all have their own little thing. One of them has like cat claws and stuff. One of them is covered in like mummy rags, and Big Barda is just like an armored up Wonder Woman who just takes no shit from anybody or whatever. And also, she falls in love with, because she's Big Barda. She's this big badass, and she falls in love with Mr. Miracle, who is the world's greatest escape artist. And he is brought to, I don't know, is Calabac Highfather's son, or was it Scott Free that is his son that they switch? I think maybe it might have been Scott Free, but yeah, he comes to Apocalypse and he becomes Mr. Miracle and keeps plotting ways to escape but failing and getting tortured, and he gets better and better. I think one day he finally gets away, but he falls in love with Big Barda, and it's this really interesting relationship of she's the male in a way, because she's the man of action and he's a quiet, soft-spoken guy he's very nimble and very clever,
crafty, high decks.
And I remember them being one of my favorite like little relationships from the comic books. And I was like, apparently at the end we do get to see, as Zack Snyder quotes, the whole family.
That ought to be interesting.
So when like a boom tube opens up and you see like Darkseid and the Furies and like his entire invasion force, I'm like, I can't wait to see that.
That'd be neato.
And what's weird is there is a New Gods movie coming from DC by Ava DuVernay.
Yeah, I think which would be
and I
really need.
I am excited to see. I didn't like Wrinkle in Time, but I like Selma, and she was going to be doing Black Panther, and they went with Ryan Coogler. So like,
She's a good documentarian as well.
Yeah.
Like she's done some really good stuff recently.
I am curious if I love.
And I wonder if Wrinkle in Time was mostly just Disney's
It could be
restraining her ability, because she's clearly a good director.
I watched it, and it felt kind of like watching Doctor Sleep, where it's like it feels a little young adulty for me.
I'm about to watch Doctor Sleep soon. I've been traipsing around it for too long, and it's like
it's better than I make it sound. It's just not a particularly great horror movie, but there are moments of like that's really good.
I mean, I'm just a big Mike Flanagan fan.
Yeah.
So,
but I loved the fact that like this is the sequel to The Shining. It's not another horror movie. It's this weird kind of character thing about the kid growing up
about Danny
and learning his power essentially to the shine or whatever. And I'm wondering like if.
And Rebecca Ferguson looks nuts in it. Like she's
good.
Really, really
She's very
scary
good.
and cool. She's got that big old hat.
There's a part where her hand gets all gnarled up. It's really good. If this comes out and we love their interpretation of Steppenwolf and Darkseid and stuff, what is she going to do? Is she going to just completely because the rumor is it's in the DCEU, so that means it's part of this universe. So she going to keep the cast? Steppenwolf will probably be dead at the end of Justice League, but like I would really.
It depends on if it's going to be a story set before or after. And even though something like Shazam worked, even though it's a character that isn't as mainstream as your typical Justice League crew, approaching that, I mean, it's worked for Marvel, because they've been able to be like, all right, who do you all know? General mainstream. Oh, Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, the Hulk. But I'm going to start throwing the Guardians at you, and Ant-Man and other things like that. And it works, but that's because they've got this machine that works.
Yeah.
With DC, it's a little more of a risk. And so it depends on, I think, this is me not knowing anything. This is me just being a film theorist.
Yeah.
About practicality, like we talked about last time, about scripts that we want to work.
Shot me down and broke my heart.
It's just looking at the numbers. Yeah. Numbers are not something I'm good at, but I know.
Well, the script is being her and Tom King, who has written some DC stories that I liked, have apparently finished the script or whatever. But it's been a long time since we got any news about it. I would feel conflicted if it got canceled, because I would be like, I'm kind of attached to where Zack Snyder is taking these characters, but at the same time, I'm like, I would hate for Ray Porter to love this character as much as he does, because he really does,
and
but also not get a chance to do it in a bigger movie.
That would be a real bummer.
Yeah, but
I think right now everyone's just kind of waiting patiently until productions are able to start
the guy
again.
who played Thanos first got cut, and they cast Josh Brolin. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see.
But yeah, we'll see about that. So pretty interesting. I guess the only other movie news I can think of is another great, iconic elder English actor has left us.
Yeah,
Ian Holm, age 88.
Mr. Bilbo.
Wonderful as Bilbo Baggins.
When my girlfriend told me, I was like, no,
he's going on.
He went to the Undying Lands with Gandalf and the elves. He's still fine.
Of course, I also iconic as Ash in Alien.
Yeah.
The great line.
I admire its purity.
He mentions how, but you have my. He's like, what does he say? You have my respect. Or
like that.
You have my pity. Or something, when he's like, the chances of you surviving this are nothing, but you have my pity. Yeah, awesome actor.
There's also that moment where you realize he's a robot, because you don't know that until he has
no, you don't even know their robots
out.
Are real until you get to a
what?
point. But it's also interesting going back and watching Alien again, which is never a bad thing. I mean, come on, it's Alien.
It's great. Better than Aliens, I'll say it.
Yeah.
They become cannon fodder in Aliens, but in
Aliens is a very, 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 very good movie.
Yeah.
Alien is a better movie because it is one of the best horror movies ever made.
Yeah, because it's an action. Aliens is an action movie.
Yeah, it's not a horror movie. It has great moments of horror, but it's not a horror movie. And I'm not poo-pooing on it. It's really good.
And we have Alien 3 by the first movie from David Fincher.
Hot take, love that movie.
Yeah, I've never seen it. I
love that movie.
I hear there's a director's cut / assembly cut.
I've seen the assembly cut, which is really raw, but it's been so long.
Yeah.
I think at this point you're never going to see it finish because David Fincher's like, I'd wash my hands of that movie.
He was very frustrated.
Yeah.
Like he had ideas that he wanted to do that didn't get approached, and very much in 20th Century Fox fashion. Like
just amazing shots in that movie, and the tone is so interesting.
That
And,
came out in
and
like the 90s.
91, 92, 93, because 7 was 96, I think. 96, 95. But 7 looks like it came out in like 2002, but it looks so good, and that's because he's got good. But the one Ian Holm performance, I remember.
From Hell.
Yes, From
Really?
Hell.
I was gonna make.
Yeah, no, it's From Hell. Is him playing him.
Because Alan Moore hates it and shits on it.
Well, it's also not that great a movie. It's very stylized, but not very
There's
smart.
some violence in it that I was like, ugh.
Oh, it's a gruesome picture. It's
The part where a girl gets her throat slashed open, you just see it.
oh yeah, no,
splatter
it takes from Alan Moore's lengthy, almost unneedingly lengthy. From Hell, which is more of him just being like, you know what's cool? The occult. You know what's behind everything?
Yeah.
The occult.
Yeah, I think he went down the Wikipedia page of Jack the Ripper and got like you always said to me with the Snyder Cut, he's drawing the red tacks and putting things here.
Well, this will go right here, and it's very clear he put it right there. And when he cut them open, it was very clear, like this sigil. It's the occult.
Yeah, he talked about like how when you go down that road,
The
there's
man's a
like,
wizard.
It's never he is. He'll curse you for 1,000 years if you say something mean about him or whatever. But he talked about like going down the Jack the Ripper wormhole is like it's fruitless and it just frustrates you because of all these unanswered questions and stuff.
That's why it's the toppest tier next to the Zodiac of the true crime world.
Yeah.
But Ian Holm plays the alleged, at least in this film, the alleged surgeon who is like I think they went with the theory of the royal surgeon or royal doctor is the one that did it, and he has this great great fantasy moment where he's like orchestrating with a knife and everything. And that movie again, not good. Johnny Depp, Robbie Coltrane, I think, and
Yeah, he plays the sergeant.
and
Heather
who's
Graham?
Heather Graham. Okay, yeah, Heather Graham, and Ian Holm's the best part of it.
Yeah.
'Cause-
I like that movie in spite of itself. Like I think it's interesting and it's
very
fun.
of its era. Like,
Yeah,
it's
but
very
it's-
turn of the century.
But I also realize that it's probably not good. I don't even know if the graphic novel is good either.
It's long. I've only read a little bit of it. It's long and mostly in like really black and white. So it's a history book essentially.
Okay.
But it might be worth checking out sometime. But yeah, Ian Holm, great voice actor too. Was great in Ratatouille as the chef, the jealous, evil little chef.
Oh yeah, he's the owner of the new restaurant
Yes,
of Gusto's or whatever.
That's
Nice, I
Ian
didn't
Holm.
know that.
Yeah, that's Ian Holm. Good voice actor. Could range between being very tender and very sweet, and then very sinister. Because the Bilbo scene where he's got the ring and then just
Yeah.
I think
That scared me as a kid.
Oh,
It's terrifying.
yeah, one of the. Oh yeah, that one stands out. So yeah, rest in peace.
Those are my rest in peace.
Ian
That's my
Holm.
fondest memory is Bilbo Baggins.
Yeah, I mean,
he's delightful, and just the first time you meet him when he's just like in his house avoiding people, and like Gandalf comes home and you see this light in his eyes.
Mm-hmm.
That's how good that movie is. You feel their history without having I hadn't read that book at that time, but as soon as he goes Gandalf and he just like, gives him that big hug.
It's so it talk about acting from something big that we don't see. You know, most of the audience is like, well, we know The Hobbit, we know who Bilbo Baggins' story is, but Holm had to encompass that whole history
Without
in
you
just
seeing it.
performance.
Yeah.
And every little nuance of his face, every little stammer, every little thing is just so perfect.
Yeah, he's
yeah.
great.
So great actor. Rest in peace.
Yeah.
Shall we move on to the movie proper now?
Yes. So we were talking about like potential episodes, and you apparently had not seen this movie. So
Been
we
wanting
talked-
to, much like Dr. Sleep, and just sort of tiptoeing around it.
Yeah, and it got away from us, and we decided to do an episode. Matt, what were your expectations going into this movie?
Better than what I initially saw with the trailer for The Invisible Man. At first, I remember when they first saw the trailer, me and some friends were seeing it, and I think we all just kind of like rolled our eyes at it, like, okay, what's this? This seems kind of silly, but I was like, it's Elizabeth Moss though,
Yeah.
and she's really good.
She's the queen of messy hair and a bad eye makeup.
She's kind of a modern Laura Dern a little bit.
A woman
'Cause-
losing her cool, just like, yeah.
but she's also, if you've seen any of Handmaid's Tale,
I have not.
she can say so much with one expression.
Yeah.
And I've loved her since Mad Men. She's great in Mad Men, and she's really good in Handmaid's Tale. It's
I remember
just
seeing her in, what is it called? The West Wing?
Was she in
As
The West Wing?
President's daughter?
oh wow, yeah, because she's been acting since she was a kid.
I think so.
She's
or very nearly there.
She's been around for a while. Yeah, I think Mad Men's the one her playing Peggy is the one I go back to all the time because that sort of set her off in a new direction. But then her in Handmaid's Tale, she's able to display fear, disgust, frustration, and anxiety all in just one dire and dour stare, just like
She's a good face actor. as
Great
they call
face
it.
actor.
Like Joaquin Phoenix style.
and so I was like, okay, you're gonna get this in this movie. My expectations, however, when reviews started coming through, is it was way better than people were saying. Like, it's way more suspenseful, violent and intense, and sinister. I was really, at that point, I was like, all right, I'm ready for a thriller that's really going to kind of get under my
It
skin
was
a little bit.
definitely like a horror movie that I felt like is its own thing, and it's not. It didn't feel cheap, like it's built around jump scares. It's built around like mounting
Tension.
tension and stuff with some good payoffs, if I can say so myself. I think at least.
Well, this will be an interesting conversation because I didn't like it as much as I wanted to.
Fair enough.
I very much, since we were just talking about things like Insidious and Sinister. Again, I haven't seen Upgrade, but those movies for me, a lot of those James Wan, Lee Wannell kind of produced or directed things, because even I think Saw suffers from this now, is those movies are so serious and they take themselves so seriously. And this movie takes itself very seriously, that when it becomes corny, because it does.
It does?
I
You're
think-
going to have to convince me of this.
I think it ends up coming off a bit corny and a bit soap opera-y and a bit things like that. The tone doesn't work for me. Acting works for me. Like, I think of Sinister, Ethan Hawke is absurdly good in Sinister, like too good. Like, he's really into this performance. That I remember when we were watching it, I was just like, well, he's doing an A performance here in a movie that's very clearly a C minus, or a D
I'd
plus.
agree with that. It carries that movie for sure.
And Elizabeth Moss goes up and down here with I mean, she's both really on it when not everybody else is, and when the story itself isn't. So I guess I'm gonna have to think of a lot of this, my thoughts on it as we're going through it. But let's
My only expectations were like we were looking for a cool horror movie, and I'm a huge fan of like H.G. Wells. I've read some of those books and stuff.
Yeah.
And I never read The Invisible Man because just for some reason it never spoke to me. But for some reason when I saw that trailer presented like that, I was like, because when I first saw the trailer, I was like, oh, it's a ghost story. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, oh, no. Like when she says like he would find a way to be there right in front of me and I would never see him. I was like, oh, it's the Invisible Man. And then at the end of the movie, I was like, it is the Invisible Man. I was like, this is interesting. It's an approach to this movie that I think is real novel and interesting.
Well, we should talk about what it originally was going to be.
Yeah, well, it was going to be a part of the Dark Universe. Johnny Depp was Dark Universe is the interconnected MCU-style monster verse of the Universal monsters.
Starting with Tom Cruise's in The Mummy.
Garbage movie.
Yep.
Don't see it.
And that's what sank it. Was the Tom Cruise Mummy.
And they really went for it in that movie. Big budget, it's
what a shame.
Here's the problem with the idea for that. You can't build a horror universe of monsters by making like action movies.
No.
Because the Mummy, and there's moments of it that I like. Sophia Boutella as the Mummy and the two eyes shots, and she has some great stuff. I just feel like it's at best like a C action movie trying to be a horror movie, but what are you gonna do when you get to Dracula? Mm-hmm. And I am very protective of Dracula because I hate most of the movies.
Well, I mean, that was coming straight off of Dracula Untold, which was
another attempt at because of the end of that is the game is afoot or whatever. It's very much here's our sequel.
Because then they also had the Oh,
Frankenstein one?
Yeah, Victor not
Frankenstein.
I Frankenstein with the
Not Victor Frankenstein.
No,
but
that's
Toilet
the-
Bowl Max Landis.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
with Daniel Radcliffe.
One of the worst movies I've ever paid money to see.
So at that time there were a lot of these attempts
Yeah.
to tell these stories, and we were talking about something like Van Helsing, where it's like that's in the mythos of that same world,
That
but
would
it's
work.
more stylized and over the
If you do a
top.
monster verse like that, where it's real tongue in cheek, and I don't love Van Helsing. I admire it for knowing what it is.
I admire
but
its purity.
I admire its purity. But I don't. That would work. Doing this weird middle ground doesn't work. You got to pick one or the other. And I personally, I would be intrigued by like you take all these characters like a Dracula or a Wolfman, because those are movies that I love and they're stories that I love. And Dracula is a story that gets misunderstood. It's about like Victorian repression and sexuality and all this stuff.
And it's It's what's a epistolary? Like it's all told in notes and letters. And,
Kind of, yeah.
It's like a found footage book, almost.
And there's a weird, eerie, gothic horror. I remember when Jonathan Harker was like, there's a scene where, and they're getting off topic here, but there's a scene in Dracula when I was reading the book where Jonathan Harker is talking to Dracula, and they made a big, like, how old he is, and like it doesn't feel like he should even be alive. He looks so old or whatever. And they're looking out at the Transylvanian night, and he tells them about like the storied history of this land and the battles that were fought here and the blood that drenched into the soil and stuff. And he goes, if I didn't know better, it would almost be like he was there himself. And I was like, that's really good. And like, I really admire Dracula for being like, unlike any other kind of horror story. It's a slow read if you're reading it today because it didn't have today's writing
And it was
sensibilities.
written the way it was.
And the
Stoker.
industry is different, and what we demand from books are different.
Well, and
But-
also talking about what it's about as well is plague, you know,
Yeah.
like the because Dracula is trying to get to England,
Yeah.
and there is this undercut of the fear of disease and spread of disease, and
Yeah.
he's a blight, and
Yeah, and I don't know if anyone has ever gotten it right.
well, I was like, what Dracula movie you think has done the best? I mean, we're on topic because this is going to lead
Yeah.
into the Invisible Man, but
That's a good one.
was it the Gary Oldman, Bram Stoker's?
I think that comes the closest, but I also really don't like it. And it's
I hear that a lot.
because of weird Francis Ford Coppola eccentricisms and like weird performances.
late
and-
year.
Yeah, like it's just doesn't hold up. You know who would make a great one? Robert Eggers.
Well, he's gonna be doing Nosferatu at some point.
Yeah, so like I think he would have the right sense of atmosphere, like from The Witch, to make a movie that is a quiet horror movie.
And at this point, like I know that he's got that Viking film that he's going to be doing at some point, that Nordic film that he's got coming up next.
Yeah, he was
but
talking
he's
about-
already been casting Dracula. Like I think Anna Taylor-Joy, who plays
The Lady and the Witch.
yes,
the daughter.
she's supposed to be playing Mina Harker or Mina Murray. So that's all we know so far.
Yeah,
but
he's doing like I remember he was talking about doing a movie with like knights and stuff, and I want him to see him do an action movie.
I think it's probably going to be what this
Yeah,
Viking sort of movie is going to be.
yeah. One can hope. One can only hope. But I think that one comes the closest. I've watched some of the Bela Lugosi one and stuff, and it is for its time. I can see how people would watch that and be like, "Oh, that is scary" and stuff. But no one has ever quite got the atmosphere right.
I know the worst one I've seen.
Which one is that?
It is
The Gerard Butler one, or
no. Dracula 2000.
Yeah.
That movie's kind of fun. It's
weird.
bad, but it's
It's
kind of
weird.
fun. it's where Dracula's revealed to be Judas.
yeah.
I kind of think that's fun. That's
think
like
it's a cool idea.
alternative mythology kind of deal.
That's what Dracula suffers from, though, is people come up with better ideas.
yeah, and it's
they,
just
they
like
think they come up for better ideas of like, oh, what if Dracula was?
because he's not the first vampire, right? Like not the first vampire in literature.
No,
I mean he had a bunch of Victorian era knockoffs like
Yeah.
Penny Dreadfuls and Pulp.
Yeah, no, I don't
read
think he's the
read the
first
League
one.
of Extraordinary Gentlemen if you want to see a bunch of different vampires that
Right.
Alan Moore knows about.
That would be the best way you could ever do a universe, is like you bring them all together in some weird end of the world horror Cthulhu thing.
Yeah, not Monster Squad though,
Yeah,
where
but
the
yeah,
Wolfman has nards.
Yeah, you don't need it to be like they're bad guys, but they're also kind of good at heart. No, you need
Suicide Squad.
yeah, and I remember reading Dracula and being like very immersed in like the story and like even that line of what beautiful music they make, the children of the night or whatever. I was very much like when I read that book, I didn't, none of it sounded as cheesy as watching those movies from Dracula that I'd seen that were just never quite got it right. But what was the worst one you said you saw?
I'm trying to find he's a classic director of
Is it the one with Christopher Lee? There was that one.
no,
was from
this
the
one had Rutger Hauer. This was recent. It's by like a legendary Italian director, and I don't think it's Bava.
Rutger Hauer? I can't even remember. How recent is this?
2014, 2010, sometime around there. It was an Italian picture.
The only one I
was-
remember is Dracula Untold.
This one is this one kind of just falls into the so bad it's good category.
Yeah.
But it's directed by the guy who did Suspiria, Argento. It was Dario Argento.
Oh, okay.
Dario Argento directed this one. It's hilarious. It's it's a little more closer to the adaptation because Dracula turns into a bunch of weird stuff, including praying mantis and things like that. And it's like I
I don't remember that in the book.
Yeah,
I remember him turning into clouds and like wolf monsters and stuff, and the wolves.
Yeah,
and
he
stuff.
turns into several wolves and stuff. Watch some clips from this one. I think it's just called like Dracula something 2010 or something like that. It's directed by the great who I just mentioned. I can't remember his name because I keep thinking of Mario
Argento.
Bava, Dario Argento, who's now I think in his 80s or something, and he's just pumping these movies out.
Yeah.
I think it has Ezio Argento, his daughter, in it, and she's mostly naked in it because it's an Italian movie, and
Weird.
it's I forget the guy who plays Dracula, but Rutger Hauer plays Van Helsing. So one of his last pictures before he passed recently.
And it's just bad.
Oh, it's great. It's so bad. It's so much fun. Me and my friends watched it, and we were just like laughing all the way through. There's a part where Dracula goes to a pub with a bunch of like scruffy vampire hunter dudes that Van Helsing has gotten together, and he just murders these guys, and it's the chef's kiss. It's just some heads rolling and everything. It's terrible, but it's fun. So
Okay,
that's probably a lower tier Dracula.
Yeah.
But we didn't get this far into it because the Dark Universe was shut down because the Mummy was terrible.
Yeah.
We got a glimpse of Dr. Jekyll played by Russell Crowe.
Who I don't hate in that movie.
He's a little over the top.
But he's over the top. But I think that's like
He knows the movie he's in.
Yeah, he gets it, and
Yeah.
it's fun, and he's having fun with it. Russell Crowe seems like a prima donna who beats people up in hotel rooms with his telephone or whatever.
Yeah.
But at least like
Now
as
that
an
he's
older,
older now and a little more,
mellowed.
yeah, I think he's more just like, yeah, I'll be in your movie. I don't care.
He's directed The Water Diviner. He knows what it's about now.
And who else was in this? You know, we knew Johnny Depp was supposed to play the Invisible Man.
Javier Bardem was going to be the Phantom of the Opera. Good casting choice, I say.
Great casting choice. Forgot about because there's a legendary picture
There's going
of
to be a
all
creature,
the actors
there was
like
going to be a
looking
creature
good.
of the Black Lagoon, which is a movie that I would love to see.
We got Shape of Water,
Yeah.
which is the
Well,
better
I
version.
think Del Toro was supposed to do Black Lagoon. Too.
Interesting, because he loves that movie.
Angelina Jolie was going to be Bride of Frankenstein.
John Hamm was
or maybe John Hamm was the Phantom of the Opera.
no,
Or was he like
I think he's the Wolfman.
Someone
I think
said the
he's-
Hunchback of Notre Dame or something. Not a horror movie.
Not a
Again,
horror movie.
here's why it doesn't work. You take these seminal pieces of literature, or some of them are. I mean, is Phantom of the Opera a book? No, it's a play.
Yeah, it is. Gaston Leroux.
Oh yeah, that's right. So like you take these classics. The Wolfman, I don't think is not literature, but that movie, I liked the Benicio del Toro one.
I was just thinking about
it's a
that
lot
one.
of fun gore.
Yeah.
And I think that like you take these classics that people already like, and like the only way to do a monster universe in the way they're thinking, which is like Avengers style thing, is to like bastardize the properties themselves. You take the Mummy and you turn it into this weird action movie. I don't know what you would do when you got to Dracula. You'd have to make another terrible like action-y movie, and it's not what it's about. The Wolfman is about a guy becoming a savage and having to live with his own savagery.
So is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. It's
Yeah.
about giving into full id and becoming
And again, that's
an
based on
amoral
a
monster.
novel that is great.
Yeah.
If you've ever read Robert Louis Stevenson's book, it's a great book. And the only way you do it is by turning it into these nothing movies where they have to be good guys.
And then Frankenstein
way.
is just like one of the greatest pieces of horror literature of all time.
Yes.
But it's a very different. The creature itself doesn't work outside of itself. You know, it could. I mean, but it's
like
you know.
and like you'd have to give him like super strength or something, which
Right.
is not. That's not what Frankenstein is about. Frankenstein is about you creating life and hating it, and it's about child abuse.
The best Frankenstein thing that came out was the recent English theatrical production of the play, where Benedict Cumberbatch and Johnny Lee Miller traded off playing Dr. Frankenstein and the creature every night.
Nice.
And they aired it for free from the National Theater. I think the National Theater recently, but it's because of COVID, but it's not up anymore. But that's an interesting take, and Danny Boyle directed it.
Oh,
but that's where it's like it's from the book. He's watching this thing learn and question itself, and then reflect its own issues back at humanity.
Yeah.
Drop it off with this. We'll get back to the movie with Alan Moore. The one thing that
it doesn't work.
Yeah.
You can't do it without bastardizing these seminal works of literature and fiction.
And this is what League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, the comics, do, which I stand those dumb comics.
I remember that movie.
The movie is abysmal. Fun, but it's abysmal. The books I really enjoy because they're just really fun.
It's Victorian Avengers.
Yeah, it's Victorian
That's what I
Avengers,
say.
but way darker, way
darker, way
more
weirder.
twisted, way more Alan Moore. But what they do is there's no Dracula in it. The shadow of Dracula exists only in Mina Murray's trauma.
Yeah, she's the wife of Jonathan Harker.
Yeah, they're divorced in the book, so she's back to being Mina Murray.
So is he a vampire too?
No, their just relationship fell apart. There's no vampires in it.
But except for her.
She's not a vampire.
Oh yeah,
That's
right.
only in the movie, which completely
What? Boo!
It completely ruins her character in the books, because what makes her interesting is she's the one they come to, the English government comes to lead this group of maniacs, because they're like, you have experience, you're sharp, you're smart. We're trusting a woman to lead a group of dangerous men. You know, Alan Quartermain is a lunatic drug addict.
Yeah. Who trips balls.
Captain Nemo hates the English government and English people for the tyranny that they've done to his people in India. Yeah. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde are
unstable.
Are unstable, and Holly Griffin, the Invisible Man, is a sociopathic mass criminal, rapist, and murderer. Probably one of the most disgusting villains.
So it's a woman, Invisible Man?
Nope.
Holly Griffin?
Holly Griffin is the character because Griffin is the name of the character in the book.
Yes.
What Moore did is he gave him a new name in it by taking the name of the murderer Holly Crippen, who killed somebody on a transatlantic ship in the early 1900s, and they caught him because it was the first use of wireless communication, and it was like a big news event. And so they took the first name of Holly from the murderer Holly Crippen and just give it to Griffin's name. So he's Holly Griffin in League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
I want to say it. I like the movie version better. I like the idea of a thief who bumbles his way into it and can't.
Rodney Skinner. He's much
Played
more
by Tony Curran.
Yeah.
Who has been in a lot of things that I like. He's famously killed by Russell Crowe in Gladiator.
Yep. He's in the movie. Skinner is just kind of, I'm just a happy-go-lucky criminal. You can't trust me because they can't see me.
like
and then
him.
Griffin is just like,
I'm here.
I don't care what people think about me. They discover him in a girls' orphanage, pretending to be God and having his way with a bunch of women. And so he's a scumbag monster human. And he later betrays humanity to the Martians in the second book. So Griffin's an interesting character and bad. So to Griffin, we're going to leave that to go to. Let's talk about the Invisible Man.
Yeah. What did you think?
Well, do you want to go kind of over the plot? Because this
yeah.
deviates because Griffin is not the main character here.
Yeah, that's the biggest difference. And
Yeah.
I kind of admired, this is like one of the few times where they take a piece of work that I admire and change it completely, and I'm not horribly offended by it.
It almost, for me, I didn't like that at first. Is one of the things I didn't like about it is that the character of Griffin in this movie, Adrian Griffin, only exists, much like Dracula for Mina Murray, only exists as the shadow of trauma, which is, you don't really get to see him or know him or anything before the events of the film
Except for
start.
maybe like a little bit at the end, and it's just
Well, at the end, yeah, but we'll get to that when we get to that. That's spoilers.
So it starts off with her getting away from this dude's house, and right away the first thing I notice is like it's shot in a way that's very tense and very like she opens her eyes and she's trying to get out of this house and pack herself up, and
It's a
she
great
has everything planned out.
it's a
which
great
should
opening.
Show you his sociopathy of like to what degree he is overbearing and controlling. essentially.
She has drugged him with what is it, dimethylol or
Something like that.
It comes back around like that. That little bottle of knockout is a major MacGuffin in the story.
Yeah.
But yeah, that sequence is great because she's just has everything planned out. She's Cecilia is your name, Elizabeth Moss's character, and she's making her run away.
Yeah, there's even a great little part where as she's walking downstairs, she looks at his laboratory, and you don't see anything, but do you see something? Maybe is there something there? That's what I'm thinking.
Because you see,
You see, we can't. It's spoilerish, but
right.
we'll have to
but
talk
but
about it
this
later.
Griffin seems to be kind of like an Elon Musk sort of. He's an optics genius and
Tech
a
billionaire.
multi-millionaire, and lives. They're outside San Francisco because San Francisco gets a lot of play in this.
Yeah.
Off the coast in one of these great brutalist futurist homes.
Yeah.
And then he's got his big lab downstairs with all kinds of weird devices and these black suits that look like something from Westworld.
Yeah.
But she's making a run for it to get to her sister outside.
Yeah, I think that's her dog too at the beginning because the dog almost ruins it for her essentially, and eventually the alarm goes off and she's waiting for her sister to come there, and she meets her sister in the woods. She picks her up, and then Adrian at the very last minute
Comes running out of the woods and just
and you see it like in the distance, like you're just sitting there and you're like, you need to get out of here. He's right there, and he just bashes the window out because he's a
lunatic,
crazy
Yeah.
lunatic.
and
And come to find out a few days, weeks maybe later, he has killed himself.
because
and
she's been living with
her sister and her boyfriend.
Are they in a relationship?
No. It's her partner or something.
Yeah, it's and he's a cop played by Aldous Hodge.
Yeah.
So he's a San Francisco detective. They're on great friendly terms. She's been staying at his place, but it's very clear that all these things that are kind of happening around have affected her. We learned that
She's afraid to leave the house.
yeah, we learned that what Adrian did to her is a history of horrific, all varieties of abuse.
Yeah.
Physical, psychological, emotional. He has put her through the ringer and has annihilated her sense of self.
Yeah.
And that is kind of what the movie is about.
Yeah.
But so yes,
Yeah, so
Adrian's brother
Yeah,
shows up at the will because Adrian's supposed to be dead.
Yeah, he is committed suicide, and he leaves her. I can't remember exactly how much, but
$9 million.
$9 million.
This was $5 million. This was me and my roommates were watching this. This kind of proposed a problem, a little tongue in cheek. But when we found out she got $5 million, we were all just like, I don't care as much anymore because she's now a millionaire. We'll get to that in my
but
criticism.
It's contingent upon the fact that she cannot be labeled criminally a criminal
Yes.
or mentally incompetent.
It's that particular clause where it's the same clause that sort of shows up in Knives Out. It's the whole like you'll get the will as long as you are not seen incompetent or criminal by court.
Yeah.
So and then Tom is the brother, and he's like, "You're right. My
Brother was a monster.
my brother was a monster. He's a sociopath. He was terrible, and I'm glad he's dead."
Yeah.
So
but
everyone
he also does everything that his brother would want him to do. Because I don't think this is a spoiler to anybody. The brother's not dead. It's pretty obvious.
Yes, yeah.
Adrian is still alive.
But the movie does throw you for a loop, and I'll tell you why when we get into spoiler stuff.
Yeah.
So little things start happening. Everything's kind of coming around. She's using this money for good, is trying to help her friend's daughter to go to college.
Yeah.
And pays for that. So she's definitely on edge. And is
to the
terrified.
point that
and
her sister on numerous times points out, you've got to get it together and stuff. And he's
they have a
gone,
kind of a
he's-
contemptuous relationship as well.
Yeah.
Because she's kind of like you can't be independent. You know, you're using me and everybody else to just kind of lean on. And,
Yeah, which is understandable because she spends her whole life at the beck and call of like this lunatic. So
Yeah.
like she has no sense of agency.
And it
So
says
it's-
a lot about, like you said, this is kind of a Me Too kind of movie where most of these characters are not fully believing her.
Yeah.
Either they're all just kind of like okay, you know. But I wish they kind of leaned a little
I'm surprised
more.
nobody said like, well, you were more than happy to live in his multi-million-dollar mansion,
And now
blah,
you're
blah, blah.
have $5 million.
I was like, oh, boo-hoo. Like I was expecting someone to like say something like that.
Yeah,
at
most
some
of
point.
everyone's really understanding, which makes sense because it is
Yeah.
2019. So
So let's keep going. What are the things that you like about this movie?
it's so well shot. The pacing is nice. There are great moments where a character will leave, and this is something that James Wan does as well in some stuff like The Conjuring and even Insidious, is a character will leave the screen, but the shot will stay. And you're as
expecting something,
yes,
and it has this weird tense feeling,
and something may not happen, but you as the audience know either there's a ghost or in this case an invisible man, and something is going to happen, and it starts very subtly.
Yeah, in fact, Leigh Whannell said that he went through the movie. I think it was a commentary or maybe a video on YouTube where he goes through like every scene that Adrian is in.
I need to watch that.
Yeah,
because that,
and I don't know if it's a commentary or a YouTube video. I'll see if I can track it down. But I was very much like, that is interesting to me,
because he's like, I know when he's there.
Because he's also such a creep that even when he's not doing something, there's definitely like the
yeah,
you know, something's there.
Because he does little things, and the reasons why kind of become a little muddled. I get when we get to spoiler territory, which will be pretty soon.
Yeah.
Because essentially everything after this is just she knows. She's like, I know he's here. I know he's alive. I know he's hunting me, and I know that he's going to call. Because we see things like the stove turns on and almost burns the house down, or someone is stalking her while she's sleeping.
He takes her notes out of her work because she wanted to be an architect. And I was like, that is the one that felt the most vindictive. Like, yeah, you think you're going to fucking make something of yourself? I'm going to take this stuff out of your briefcase. You're going to fail miserably. Yeah, like that felt vindictive.
The escalation of things are small but impactful things, and then she passes out. He drugs her with the same drug that she had before to make her seem like also not just incompetent but possibly an addict herself. Essentially, he's on an invisible campaign of self-destruction for her.
Yeah.
And then it escalates from there, which I guess we can now.
I think that it's hard to talk about this movie without spoilers. So
because everything escalates from here.
Some of the first time we really see him is the one that like really like got me in the theaters, is where it's the sheet.
Yeah.
She's pulling the sheet and you just see.
Yeah.
And I was just like, that's terrifying.
He's walking up the sheets and it's like pulling out of her hands.
And then I think he like yanks it out of her hand or something, and she immediately screams for the detective or whatever who comes in, and she goes, there was someone in here, someone stepping on it. And I can only imagine how frustrating it would be to explain to someone there was two footsteps right there and not seem like a lunatic or whatever. Like, it's hard and you feel frustrated for her.
That's because it's the doubt. It's are you just losing it? Or?
Throughout this movie, does he ever speak to her as I mean, there's a moment later when we'll get to it later, but there's a moment later in the rain where he speaks to her a lot. But like before that,
it's just the one line.
Does he like surprise or something like that? Yeah.
And at that point, the movie's still suggesting to you that she's hearing it in her head.
Yeah.
Like, we don't know. We know something's there.
I think the movie would have been better placed to when she's alone, when she's paranoid, she thinks he's in the house. What would have been a really scary scene would have been like, I know you're there and I'm waiting on you. And then just one line would be like, they're never going to believe you. And just like that way, you know, he's there.
Right.
Everywhere.
Because
that would have been terrifying.
They do pull kind of the paranoia thing. Because there's one thing I guessed that was happening. I was like, oh, I thought this would end up being the full twist, and it's a spoiler thing. But I was like,
well, we're in spoilers.
We're in spoilers now.
I mean, I think it's hard to talk about you have some negatives that we'll get to. It's hard to talk about some of those, I imagine, without being specific as to what they are. So we can go ahead and get into spoilers.
And most of them, in general, are just tonally. Like, I think there are moments when the movie gets kind of cheesy and it doesn't feel appropriate.
You'll have to explain this to me, because I thought it was very tonally consistent. I mean, there's never a moment that I was like, that's just silly. And there's stuff that I thought like where like there is a moment where it halfway turns into an action movie.
And I wish it leaned into it further, because it
was harrowing. Like the violence in this movie is pretty
I think
rough.
From what people were saying, I thought it was going to be more gory. And
it's not that it's gory, but it's just that it's vindictive.
I think I was expecting a lot of blood on walls and things, and I was like, it's not that.
When he beats up the detective late in the movie, that's
good acting on those actors with nothing on them.
Yeah, that's hard.
Yeah.
How would you do that? How did he do that? I mean, I guess it's a guy in a green screen suit or whatever.
Well, no. I mean, he's got to just do a lot of shadow boxing.
I guess there's like visual effects for the blood and stuff.
For that.
Okay, yeah, fair enough.
So one of the things I predicted that especially the second time when Tom, the brother, comes to meet her, I'm like, it's him. Tom. It's the brother. The brother's in the suit.
You think all the time?
At first. Obviously, that's proven wrong.
Yeah.
But I thought it was him the whole time. And I was like, that's a good twist.
That's a great twist.
I was because he later shows up and it's just like, that's right. When because things escalate up to the point where real violence starts taking place. Like,
oh yeah,
he hits the daughter and the daughter freaks out. Though I feel like it would have been. I feel like she would have been like, "Did you actually hit me right then? What was going on?" I don't know.
Yeah, you would think that she was like.
People's emotions are very on edge throughout the whole movie, and people react very.
I think that's how you would explain it as well, and also like they're really close, and it happened so quick. Maybe she's like, maybe it's like that thing where you're like, am I going crazy? Or you start doubting yourself,
right?
And I think that's how you would explain it,
and they keep that going on pretty.
Like
long.
If that happened to you and me in this room. And I'm way over here, you'd be like, Rob didn't hit me. Like you'd know that. But like they're in bed
real
together
close.
And stuff. So like,
but even then, it would have been like she reacted immediately, like, oh, she hit me, she hit me, and I was kind of like, I feel like their relationship is close enough that she would just be like, did you just hit me? Like for real?
Yeah.
And
to be fair, she gets pasted pretty hard. So like, I think that I don't know if she would be that chill, but like, I think that they know each other and she knows her personality well enough to be like, she wouldn't.
But this is also Griffin's plan, is to make her seem insane.
Exactly.
Especially when it leads up to everything with her sister, because she gets a bad email.
Again, it's very Me Too. It's like, God, you're so sensitive.
Mm-hmm.
Calm down.
Oh,
like,
you never know with people, and it's that is effective.
Yeah.
Throughout. And the one thing that did shock me that I was like, oh, is when she finally meets with her sister at the diner at the restaurant.
God.
And
I was so frustrated.
Yeah.
And so angry.
Because it's startling. Like, that actually got me.
And like you see, because I mean, spoiler, if you're this far in, you're listening to the spoilers. And I guess we give our final recommendation before spoilers, but I guess we have to talk about the spoilers to get there. But I would still say like that part was like,
because that's the moment that's
not even horrifying. That's just like,
yeah,
and you're just like, no,
because I didn't see it. Didn't see it coming.
Yeah, but you see the knife floating behind her,
and she sees it. That's the thing, is the sister sees it at first because they're just having a conversation, and then she's like, "What the?" and then slices her throat.
Yeah,
and
then puts the knife in her hand. And as soon as that happened, I was like,
calm and so like specific, like just like dead here. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, and I would have been like, first of all, don't touch the knife.
Well,
he wants your fingerprints on it.
Well, she's so shocked at that point. Like, I essentially imagine he just put it in. You're done.
Yeah, and I guess because
the suit wouldn't have
fingerprints, would it? Yeah. So I would,
because the suit is a new take on it. So he's not taking a potion and turning into an invisible man.
I knew it wasn't going to be. When I saw the laboratory, I'm like, oh, it's a thing he puts on.
It's essentially the closest to what we know about invisibility things, which is it's reverse a multitude of cameras that refract light, essentially.
Also, cool suit design.
Yeah.
Very, very. I don't even know how I would describe it. It looks like something out of an Alien movie.
It is very sci-fi, especially when it gets damaged later and it's just kind of glitching out. Pretty neat.
Yeah.
I don't hate this movie. I think it's a lot of fun. There are just things about it that I wish had gotten closer.
It's a movie that I wish more people would take cues from. Like, is how to build terror or suspension and stuff, and like how to portray. If you're trying to, there's two kinds of horror movies. Like ones that are like very the thinking man's horror movie, and one that's like more like jump scares and gore.
Right.
And this movie does not have jump scares, although there are parts that made me jump. Particularly when she dumps the paint, and you just see him in the when you see him in the up the attic. He's walking
before he's up in
ladder.
the attic.
And I was like, that was pretty good. And also, that's the first time you see the design of the suit, kind of.
Right. It's very brief. It's very brief. They don't do a lot of another movie. This, of course, reminds me of is Paul Verhoeven's Hollow Man.
Yeah.
Where it's also not about Kevin Bacon's character, but he is. Once he becomes the Invisible Man, essentially, the plot goes off to be about Elizabeth Shue and Josh Brolin.
Yeah.
And the other crew trying to survive him as it turns into a slasher movie.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of still really well CGI scenes of him getting covered with something and he's just walking around.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I imagine that's easy to do.
Yeah.
Like
but it still works for a movie that came out like 1999.
Oh, yeah. It's visually impressive. It's just a little... It's not nearly as good as I think he probably thought it was when he was making it.
No.
And I think even now he looks back at it like it is what it is. It's all right.
It's okay.
The first time that he really makes a big impact on her is when he attacks her in the house.
Yeah.
And the tables are flipping over and stuff. That's the one that I was like, that was really good. And that was really,
And again, one of my problems with it is and this is shown since the beginning of the movie, because I was like, oh, okay, is she is pregnant with Adrian's child, and he wants that.
She is?
Yeah.
Did I forget that? Maybe I did forget that.
Well, yeah, it's Tom mentions in the conversation, like, he found out you were taking birth control pills and he switched them out.
Oh,
So
yeah, that's
you're
right.
pregnant with his child and he wants his child.
Oh, that's right. I forgot that.
And it's a weird plot point, but essentially what it is the idea that for him, he sees it, of course, how he is. For her, a woman getting pregnant in an abusive relationship is like the stamp, is like the lock on the key.
You're tethered to this man for the rest of forever.
Yeah, it's one of the worst case scenarios because now you are in full control.
Yeah.
Obviously, there are ways to get around it, but we're not going to get into that as a pair of men. But that's the ultimate last gasp of control. She did not want to have a child with him. He tricked her, and now she's
To have a
pregnant.
child with him, yeah. There's also the dual thing is like, I'm going to have a child, but also her father is a murderer.
Right.
Like a brutal, sadistic murderer.
And a psychopath, yeah. And this was presented early in the movie, I noticed, because in the very first opening sequences, when she wakes up in bed, the camera pans down to her with her hand on her belly, and I was like, okay, that indicates something.
So you think she knew?
Yes.
Okay.
I think at least the filmmakers, at least Lee Wannell wanted you to have that in the back of your head subconsciously, and that's a smart move.
I agree with that.
He's a smart filmmaker.
I feel like she would have told them, though. So I think it's more like
I think she doesn't want it. She doesn't want it to be true.
Yeah.
But eventually, it's revealed to be true. So she's institutionalized.
Yeah.
Because his menace he does to her, the psychological stuff, I understand. Because he's trying to get her in a completely broken, vulnerable position.
Well, and he's also trying to get her to such a terrible place where she would need someone with power and money to help her.
Right.
Which is what he is. It's the ultimate like when they leave, the abuser is like, you think you could do better than me? You can't do fucking better than me. And then it's like, now they're trying to make the person need them.
Mm-hmm. And it's a plan between the two brothers.
Yeah, that's
because
I think that it is not the brother the whole time.
I don't either.
I think near the end,
yes,
it's a lot of the brother, maybe.
Because Tom has reasons to want this to fall apart, so they keep the money.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're like, you're not getting $5 million.
Also,
Forget
it shows again, like, I don't think the brother is necessarily lying when he says he was abusive and manipulative to me as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think he manipulates him into like, I need you to go to this police station. Or no, we don't at the police station, which we get one of the best / scariest action scenes.
That's the hallway sequence.
And I was very much like, I was weirded out by how much, when I loved how entertaining it was, but how
cruel and brutal it is.
For lack of a better word, how scary the violence is.
Because it's all very pop reaction.
Yeah.
Because he'll just pick up a gun,
shoots a gun,
knee, shot.
A lot of time, the person's hand is still on the gun, and then they shoot themselves in the knee, and the guy screams. Then he punches him in the face, and the guy passes out.
Yeah, because it's a nice subversion, or it's a nice way to justify. Because in The Invisible Man, in the book, he becomes super strong. Like
oh, he does?
Well, it's kind of suggested, at least in a lot of other Invisible Man medium, that the potion, the serum, makes him also more strong because the part of it is the psychological thing that holds us back is now free to go because no one can stop him.
Yeah,
he's invisible.
So maybe it's like psychologically you feel more strong because there's nothing.
His adrenaline is at pure control because in this he's very strong, and I think the suit also provides that.
Yeah.
It's definitely something.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's a suit here as well, which also kind of preserves.
Because he's not throwing cars around and stuff, but he's
No.
overpowering people very easily because they can't see him. So that lets their vulnerability down.
Yeah.
But he's whooping ass.
I'm almost surprised that he does that because it outs him in a way. it will prove it will prove her innocence. Also, a little plot hole when he kills the sister in the restaurant. Even though I think it's a great scene, there's got to be cameras. Are they not going to see a floating knife hovering there and then kill her? And then,
I think
you would
that's
be like, Your Honor, there's an invisible man that did this, and maybe I don't know if that would hold up. Maybe he doesn't need it to hold up. Maybe he just needs her to get desperate enough to need him. Essentially, I think maybe that's what it is.
I think what it ends up kind of being is it's a big don't worry about it. I think that's kind of what they're doing. Like, I don't think about it too much because when I think about it a little bit too much, that's when the parts of the movie, like a lot of his physical violence towards her, I now understand a little more because it's like, well, no one's around to see it except you. So now the house is a mess,
and you look like
a crazy person.
Yeah.
But other than that, I'm like, what's his end goal here? Because he's not going to hurt her because he needs her alive.
Yeah.
He's never going to kill her.
Which is, I think, something I think she picks up on, but right before the police hallway sequence happens, because she stabs him with the pens or whatever.
Yeah, because she's about to slit her wrist, but it's just a ruse in order to out him. Because he's like, nope, don't do that, and then she pops him.
She does do that, doesn't she?
Yeah, she takes the pen to make it look like she's about to slit her wrists, but it's a way to show her bluff.
Yeah,
because then he reacts.
Yeah, I would have thought that he would have. That's interesting because I would have thought that another way you could have gone with that is she's going to slit her wrist for real, and he's so controlling he won't even let her do that, and he's just in the room with her, just like watching her like a mad dog.
Well, like you said, she's smart enough about him to know that he's gonna, like, she picks it up. She's like, "You're not going to let me die.
Yeah,
you have a reason to keep me alive. Just make me crazy." So eventually the fighting leads up to, I forgot, how does she, he goes to their house. He goes to the cop's house.
Yeah, so
and tries to
after the police fight, she gets a cop's gun and she damages the suit to where it's glitching in and out, which also, unless he kills all those cops, cool effects, great. This movie has great visual effects, but
because it's also very creepy because it's just like a shot of nothing, then dip 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 dip. Yeah, and he just walks by.
If he kills all those cops, if any of them are alive, and some of them are still alive, I think,
he just
there are witnesses who are just like, an invisible man attacked us and shot me in the knee. So, like, I guess it depends on how crazy you want to make him. If he's that sociopathic and reactionary,
because he has
he wouldn't
plan that's almost perfect.
Yeah, maybe he would be stupid enough to be like, oh yeah, there are cameras in that restaurant. Shit, I didn't think of that. But like, he might be narcissistic enough to where he'd be like, it won't matter. Like, or maybe he doesn't care, or maybe they can't prove it's him, so he doesn't care about that.
Well, it's like they just have this perfect psychopath plan with him and his brother, and they're also surrounded by money and power. And it's like, we'll just make anything disappear.
That's true. Yeah,
nothing can affect us.
Yeah, the brother
hyper
implies
wealthy.
that he's made other things like disappear that bothered him or whatever. So, and so after his thing is damaged, she follows him into the rain, where we get, in my opinion, a really cool conversation between her and, we know it's the boyfriend.
You know it's Adrian
because of his voice.
Yes,
and he says, "If you're this determined," and this is where I think the movie loses its motivation slightly, where he says like, "If you're gonna be like this, maybe I'll go over to that house and he says it way cooler than I do, but I'll go kill that little girl and your friend too," and she can't let that happen, so he vanishes from the rain or whatever and goes there. But also, like, his objective is to get her back, and now it's just becoming like a weird personal thing.
Yeah, now it's just a weird vendetta of, I mean, obviously his continuing plan is to hurt her in any way possible other than physically.
Yeah.
So if it's like, I've already killed your sister, and if I kill the last connections you have, then you'll have nothing.
Yeah.
But again, it becomes part of the problem, is it starts escalating into these melodramatic moments,
which I would say are
losing. I mean, again, it's well filmed.
They're effective. They still make you be like, oh no. When he's fighting the dude and the detective in the house, I was like, it's like I was wanting him to do anything, and it's just, what can you do?
Yeah.
Like,
And I forgot how they neutralize him.
Oh, they just shoot him.
Oh, that's right. They pop him. They would get the
because isn't his suit still glitching?
No, because it's not the same suit.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's
because
the brother.
It's Tom.
Yeah.
They unmask him at the end, and it's Tom. And at that point, I thought, maybe it's been him the whole time.
That's good. This is where the movie does its best work. Is it just makes you wonder and makes you get in your own head and be like, oh, what's
because
going
it's
on
like
here?
he could have impersonated Adrian's voice. I mean, they're brothers. So it's like maybe it was because we don't know Adrian's voice at this point.
Yeah,
because that's
but
another
But we
thing.
know that it's different than Tom's voice because we've heard Tom speak
the
before.
only time at this point we've ever even seen Adrian is at the beginning when he assaults the vehicle, but we only see him in silhouette in the rain.
Yeah.
So
And he
we don't even know his
he doesn't even
face.
speak. He just
Yeah.
bashes the window out or whatever.
Yeah, so we don't
But,
even know his face.
Yeah, but well, we see his face at the beginning when he's sleeping. And she
Yeah, but
looks
it's kind
she
of
looks over him.
obscured
Yeah,
though.
fair
It's enough that it's like if you saw him at a point in the movie, you wouldn't recognize him.
Yeah.
Only she would.
Do we want to talk about like where the negatives start popping up? Because I think we've been pretty positive on it so far.
Well, we're getting into the big twist at the end, where the movie kind of. We might as well
Yeah.
get into the ending.
and also she tells she could just tell the cop, oh, he may have been the guy that attacked us, but Adrian is still out there because Adrian ties himself up in a somehow or pays someone to do it in a boiler room or some shit.
Yeah,
and then they find him in there and like, oh, I've been here the whole time.
Yeah, it's like I've been here for months. He took over everything. It was Tom. It was my brother.
Very clever of him to
Yeah.
do that.
Because at that point,
What if no
you're-
one finds you though?
Yeah, yeah,
you starved to death.
But I think it's just like every night they work this plan out. Like, hey, if it all goes down, you're gonna know.
Yeah.
Again, that's a big. Don't worry
But
about
she could
it.
still tell them. But when he confronted me in the rain, it was Adrian. I know it was.
Yeah, but at that point they'd be like, look, I mean, he's been in there. It's all cleared out. It was the brother. You were just hearing things.
Yeah.
Yeah, again,
And maybe
I
she
don't
might
believe
believe
you.
that, yeah.
She's at the point because it then gets to this weird climax
Yeah.
where she goes to meet Adrian at the house.
It's almost.
At first, I thought they were in on it together.
Yeah, I
At first
got a little
at
bit of
fir-
that, but then I was like, no.
Yeah,
she's losing it too much. But but then I was like, he's almost. This is the first time in the movie I get the chance to really look at him and be like, he is almost charming.
Yeah.
You could see how in the beginning she might want to be his girlfriend, but
Well, he's also he's a good-looking, stylish, wealthy, tech-savvy guy.
Yeah.
It's just we know that he's an abusive, awful person.
yeah. So the twist of the movie is she gets up to use the bathroom or something. I can't remember. And she knows he has another suit, or he has a suit, and she knows where it is because earlier in the movie she goes to his house to try to. What does she go to the house to do? To find she breaks into the house halfway through the movie,
And the dog
finds
is there and
that's where she
everything.
finds the suit and the dog, and she
Yeah,
hides.
because we see there's 3 of them.
Yeah.
I remember that there's 3 because she also that's where she finds the suit and she sees the technology but he's there.
She leaves it in because he thinks it's still invisible or whatever. And she leaves it in the closet. She puts it on, and then she walks up to him at the dinner table and she cuts his throat.
Yeah, but it makes it look like a suicide.
Yeah.
Because that we do see the camera then.
Yeah.
The camera's in his closed
And
circuit.
it just looks like he
and it
puts
just
a
looks like
knife
he
in his
just
throat,
slits his
and
throat.
kills himself.
And that's when you get this interesting turn where the movie doesn't really frame it as a victory. It frames it as she's become kind of empowered by this as well in kind of an evil way.
Maybe like empower, but like she could never escape it, so she kind of becomes
right.
him,
It's like the
in a way.
suit, the ability to become invisible is
An
a
evil
corrupting
thing.
force because she comes off very sinister at the end of the movie.
Yeah, I do
which
feel
is
us-
a problem to me unless they're setting up for a sequel.
Well, the rumor is he says I leave it open for a sequel, but like what's the sequel is? She becomes terrible too?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
I don't know where it could go from
that
here.
deflates the theme of this being a movie about domestic abuse.
Yeah.
A Me Too kind of era film about someone who
Although-
is psychologically tormented by the ghosts of a terrible relationship, which PTSD is very, very, very real and affects some people very, very, very much like this. Except this is an allegory where it's an invisible man, literally. And then, but they're like, but we gotta kind of tie it in with something, and that kind of feel like deflates because by the end, Elizabeth Moss seems like I got you, and now the world is mine, and I'm like weird.
Do you think she's gonna like become like evil like him in the next movie, and someone has to stop her too.
It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it
but
wouldn't make any sense, but
it
I would
kinda
watch the movie.
I would watch it because I would love the idea of Elizabeth Moss playing a bad guy. We get to see a little bit of that in Us with her evil version of herself.
Yeah. She's good in that. She's good at smudging up her makeup and being hysterical.
And pouting and everything, but she's very good in this movie. That's a big highlight, is that she's very good in this, but it can almost, again, a little too over the top for the kind of movie and atmosphere that this is.
Yeah.
The guy who plays Adrian's barely in it until the end.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm assuming that he does all the Invisible Man stunts and stuff in the movie.
If it is a green screen.
Yeah.
Unless it's just other effects.
I'm sure some of it is a green screen. Some of it's like to flip over the table, they have to do a thing.
Yeah, there's just wires and something like that. So I think that's the movie. That's kind of a negative for me, is it doesn't peter out, but it does kind of deflate its own morality, its own allegory, its own tale, by being this.
Well,
I don't mind a revenge story, because you do find out it's Adrian, because earlier in the movie you've heard several times, surprise, surprise, because there's a scene where she's outside breathing and we can see the cold breath, and then we see the cold breath behind her, which is a very chilling little moment.
Wait, is that in the movie?
Mm-hmm. That's in the movie. Yeah, she goes outside.
There's one part that's just in the one that's in the trailer is like there's someone sitting in that chair.
Yeah, that wasn't in the movie.
Yeah, that's just there to just there to market it.
Which I thought that was like the central scene of gonna be the movie, and I was like, it kind of happens when she's in the institution.
Yeah,
but I thought it was gonna be earlier, and it's not.
Also, that would kind of he's too clever to do something that brazen around other people.
It depends on the scene.
Yeah,
it depends. Sometimes he's a clever master manipulator, and sometimes he just goes rage mode.
Yeah,
and it sometimes feels inconsistent.
Well, I think that's like the instability of him, is that he would be stupid enough to make mistakes too.
And if you want to get really thinky about it, it could be how Tom does it and how Adrian does it.
That too.
Maybe Tom is the one who's been doing all the calculative little subtle things, and Adrian is the more emotionally and rageful.
Tom is the one that kills the sister or something and does the bigger stuff, but Adrian is the guy. We know Adrian's the guy at the police station because he follows him into the rain. So maybe it's just that, and maybe that's just like,
because the movie,
maybe his suit is damaged. He's like, well, this is necessity. I'm not going down for this. So I'm gonna kill these fools. So yeah, maybe it's that,
because it becomes a thing where, because of that surprise thing, we know it's actually Adrian, because we don't see at the end. He's just like, it wasn't me. Tom manipulated me. Tom had power over me, and he sticks to that the whole time through.
Yeah.
So you're like, is he? But then he says, it's all a surprise.
Yeah. And
that's where you were like, it's him.
Yeah.
And he needs to go.
That's when you're very sure.
Yeah.
At least.
And she takes care of it.
Yeah, I think that I guess the ending. Two things. One, I think the ending kind of depends, sort of like the hand on the stomach at the beginning, sort of how you look at it. Mm-hmm. If you want to say, "Oh, abuse is a corruptive force," and you never really get away from it at the end, or she's just, I think she's like, it's a bittersweet victory in that there is no catharsis. Killing him does not bring her joy. Mm-hmm. She's sunk to his level in a way, and now she's relieved that he's gone, but there is no joy in this victory.
No, because he's even past his faked demise. The damage that has been done is still been done.
Exactly.
Like,
or if you want to go that other way and look at it in a different way, you could say, oh, I see it as like she's now kind of like him, and she's going to use the suit to maybe gain herself in the next movie and get a better job and do X, Y, Z, and it corrupts her.
Right. But that problem, in terms of it being divorcing itself from the abusive relationship themes, is anything she does after that is now leaves the realm of reality. It's just crime and cinematic crime.
Yeah.
What happened to her is real. But it's something that happens to people all the time.
I agree. It's tonally inconsistent. I would still watch a Now I Will Become a Burglar.
Yeah, I would too.
But
it's such a departure from what this movie should have been.
And I don't think the director is like, I would want to make that movie.
No.
I don't think he would be interested. He directs horror movies mostly. I think he would want to do that. Let's get into and then we'll start wrapping things up. What are the big negatives? The things that you were like, I know we talked a little bit about the end. What are some other things that you were like, they just took little things away? Because I came out of this movie very much like, that's one of the best horror movies I've seen in a good long while.
It is.
So what's the thing that just knocks it down to peg? I know you don't hate it, but like, what's the thing that...
Well, I think it's everything we've been talking about is just very much like James Wan sometimes do. And I would take The Conjuring out of it because I think The Conjuring is one of the best horror movies in decades.
Yeah, he's good. When he gets to do something himself, he's good.
Yeah.
See Aquaman. It's very good.
Yeah, oh yeah, that's right. He does that. But when he does his horror, like something like The Conjuring 2 or going back to Insidious or things like that, is...
He directed a movie with Kevin Bacon called Death Sentence.
Oh, I remember that.
It's all right.
Okay.
It's very like low budget and stuff. There's some cool fight scenes with him and Kevin Bacon being like a weird scrawny dad who doesn't know how to fight but has to kind of save himself and stuff, and it's pretty good.
But when I think about those particular films, the Insidious and Saw and all those, they all come out of two things I know that James Wan loves, and clearly that Wano loves. And that is classic 70s style horror, exploitation horror, the original Amityville horror, things like that. The Conjuring is very much that. It's a very 70s style horror film.
Yeah.
Slow burns, but they also love their big creature effects moments, their big scares. You can tell when something's coming, and it's in this movie, it was when the volume drops out. And there's no sound at all, and except what they want you. There's no soundtrack. It's just a blank slate of no audio.
Yeah, she turns around and sees an empty doorway.
Yeah, and it's just
I've never seen like an empty doorway be so
scary. And so they are masters of that style. And again, like it's someone leaves a shot, and the camera just stays on there, and your eyes are looking for something that's wrong. And that is very effective, but it is kind of like it's their gimmick because this is a movie that takes itself seriously, and of course has attached itself to the very serious issue of domestic abuse, both psychological and beyond. Yeah. But it does those moments, like in Insidious, like in Sinister, and even in The Conjuring, border becoming kind of corny. And border becoming kind of schmaltzy.
Interesting. I never thought about it from this way.
Because they're little tricks. They're cinematic tricks.
Well, they're a trope that cue you. It's like a jump scare.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like the what's the word? The formula editing, the organization of a jump scare in the scene. And this becomes like a cue that, a thing's about to happen.
And they sometimes subvert that.
In
The Conjuring in particular, there's a scene where the daughters are in their room, and one of them is like, there's somebody at the door. There's somebody behind the door. And and it's all tension build. Nothing happens. Yeah. But that's smart because they're like, we know how to set up a jump scare. We know how to set up tension. We know how to make a camera go from characters watching over to nothing, and then you're gripping your seat. Yeah. But nothing happens because it's a slow burn. It's a slow burn.
Yeah, I appreciate that this movie. There's a difference between being scared and then having a jump scare. A jump scare is like a big, loud noise and loud thing quickly happens, even if it's nothing.
Even if it's like someone like comes around a hallway with a puppy, you're still going to jump because it's not fear, it's fight or flight. It's
like when she dumps the paint on him, that's not a jump scare. That's just a scare.
Or when she hits the dog bowl at the beginning, and it's the loudest sound you've heard so far.
Hits the dog bowl?
Because like she's sneaking around everything, and she hits their dog bowl.
Oh,
it's
yeah,
like,
that's
right. Yeah.
That's not a jump scare.
Not a jump scare, but it is still a jump scare because everyone just went, oh.
In The Conjuring, when the woman, she's in like the stairs in the basement, and there's the hand behind her, or does that whatever it does. That's not a jump scare.
No.
That's a regular.
That's a build up.
A build up thing.
And they also they love this whole like mundane conversation, and then something happens in it. Insidious has probably one of the most famous where Patrick Wilson and the medium are talking to each other, and then she's like sitting there going like, and I feel like there's something horrible, something dark that's behind you. She looks up, it cuts to Patrick Wilson, and this evil, horrible red monster is behind him and just goes, Rah! and it's terrifying. Like that scene is really effective because it's quiet. It's just a mundane conversation.
But can he see it?
No.
Okay, fair
She sees it 'cause she's a psychic.
Okay, fair enough.
And there's a version of that in The Invisible Man. That's the dining scene.
Yeah.
They're having a mundane conversation back and forth, and then all of a sudden the sister's like, "What's that?" Knife, dead. They're good at that.
I would argue that's even more terrifying.
Well, yeah, I mean, compared to like a supernatural creature,
Yeah.
but it's a trope that these guys like using.
Yeah, because he literally takes her sister from her.
Yeah.
Which is like that. I think the reason that scene got me is one, because it's so brutal and it's so stark, and everyone in the restaurant freaks out too. But
And
also,
she freaks out, of
Yeah.
course, as well.
But also, that's when he like crosses a line.
yeah,
Like
because
he not only does he murder someone to intimidate her, but he puts her in jail and he kills someone that that she has problems with and has been trying to like repair their relationship.
and she's finally has evidence that it's like, because at this point the sister's believing her.
Yeah.
She's like, okay, then what can we do? She's like, we gotta do this. We gotta do this. What's that? Dead. Hope has been destroyed.
Yeah.
But all these are things that are just what the Juan Limmel Wannell
Yeah.
thing is. It's how they've built this whole thing up since Saw and everything, and it's made them incredibly successful. It's created their own production company. It has made them superstars in this.
Yeah. I would
Wannell's probably going to go on to a lot of other good stuff because this is a well-directed movie.
Yeah.
And
I would argue that like I've never thought about it from that angle. I don't disagree with anything. I would argue they are distinct enough to where his directing style is different than James Wan's. Like when I look at the first Saw movie, like James Wan's movies didn't start getting, and whether or not I don't hate the first Saw movie, but I don't love it either. Like it's just kind of in.
it was big for what it was at the time.
Yeah.
But
He didn't start getting great as a director till like 7-8 years later.
Yeah.
When he started doing Conjurings, he did Fast 7, and he did Aquaman or whatever. When he showed he can kind of do anything.
Yeah, he's
And
got a diversity. It's just he
if
comes
you-
from
I think
horror.
if you look at Upgrade and this, and then look at he said he directed the first Insidious,
Set a third.
the third Insidious,
Chapter 3.
Okay, which I hear is one of the okay ones, or at least it's better than the first one, is what people have been saying.
And people love that first one.
Yeah, people love the first one, but I heard it was all right. But if you look at like Upgrade and this, and then you look at a movie like The Conjuring or some movies that I've seen or whatever, I think they are visually distinct enough to where Wannell could go on to do stuff that is very much his own style and his own tone. That wouldn't be like, because when I look at Upgrade, I don't see.
A James Wan movie.
No, it's not. It is a horror movie in a sense, but it's much more of like a dark action movie where like a guy, I don't know if you know what Upgrade's about. A guy, his legs get taken from him, and then this eccentric billionaire gives him a thing that will. It interacts with your central nervous system in your brain, and he gets his legs back, and then he wakes up, and like there's a voice in his head. It's like, hello. And you're like, what? And
It's kind of a body horror, and it's also about losing control. And
you just have to see it.
I just need to
It's-
watch
it's
it.
a weird. It's a weird movie.
I
but
remember
it-
liking the style of it. Like it was
fight
filmed in a
scenes are-
very
the fight
neon
scenes-
kind of
yeah.
glowy way. And I
Also,
thought that
cool
looked neat.
idea of a future. Like it's set in like 30, 40 years in the future, and it has a cool idea, some beautiful photography in it. And the fight scenes are shot in such a way that I'm like, God, it's so robotic. There's a part where like he's lying on the ground, then he kind of gets up, like he goes zhoosh, like robot style, because he's like, I will take over for you now, and like fights the bad guy
Right.
and just dismantles him in a way that is brutal. But what's the guy who plays his name? Logan Marshall Green. The guy, I think that's the actor, and you just watch him go, Jesus Christ, as he beats the shit out of him.
That's
And
awesome.
it's really brutal. And there's parts where the robot takes it too far, and you're like, oh god.
Yeah.
So like,
Which this is, I guess, thematically very similar because it's about a powerful force that has denied you control.
yeah,
Yeah.
in a way, and Upgrade plays itself out differently than this movie, but they feel like spiritual successors, and it makes me want him to direct more things like this, where they have a tone, a style. They're what's the word? Very very artisan blockbuster horror in a way, kind of thing. It's somewhere in that realm, not like a thinking man's horror, like
But it's a
like
little
like
more
a witch or
it's a
something.
little more stylized, a little more auteur. You know,
it definitely it's hard because here's the thing about horror movies that I don't like a lot of them because a lot of them they're bland and they're cookie cutter and like to quote my ex co-host, it is the least artisan of the film genres a lot of times.
it's something I've always said is I love horror because there's a handful in your hand of some of the best films ever made that are horror movies,
And then a
but
bunch
you
of
pulled it
direct
out of a
DVD.
lake of pure trash.
yeah, of like direct to DVD nonsense.
Like
That's
a
bad.
tepid pool that smells terrible.
Yeah.
But in your hand are some of the greatest films ever made.
Right.
Your Exorcist, your Shining, your Jaws, all fall into thriller or horror, and they're some of the greatest films ever made.
Yeah, and I think getting interesting horror movies. I heard that crocodile movie Crawl was pretty good. Too.
Yeah, I heard that Crawl was good.
I don't know if
didn't
it's a horror
expect it
movie,
to be
but
good.
like I want more movies like this, and if they do monster like Universal monster movies like this going forward, I would very much be like, I would love to see this kind of an approach to a Wolfman.
Well, I think he would do good talking about this idea of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Like,
Oh, definitely.
a lot of these stories, like the Wolfman, the Invisible Man, and Dr. Jekyll, are about the innate fear of loss of control,
Yeah.
and therefore loss of morality.
Yeah.
Because these are all stories about people who become savage monsters because their humanity has been robbed from
Yeah.
them.
Dr.
But that's a very
I don't think we've ever had a good Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde movie. Is there one that exists that I don't know about?
unless it's one of those Lon Chaney ones from back in the 30s.
I saw a direct to DVD one with Doug Ray Scott on it. And it's the thing about Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and we'll start wrapping it up here, is like the fun about it is like he turns into a different person. So kind of like the Invisible Man, he has anonymity. He has this thing he can hide behind. That wasn't me. It was this guy. And the idea of that eventually is that he likes the power that it gives him, turning into a big hulking brute of a man that can do whatever he wants.
One of the things I like going back again to League of Extraordinary Gentlemen is I like the way Alan Moore writes Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde,
Yeah.
which is they are two completely separate individuals sharing the same body.
Yeah.
And over time, even Jekyll notices it. He's like, I feel like he's becoming more. He's getting to have more time. I feel myself disappearing and Hyde becoming stronger. Because Hyde is a brutal, horrible creature, but he's also an English ruffian who has taste and has class and has
Yeah.
something he likes.
The
But
first
he's
time we meet him is a friend of Dr. Jekyll, and he sees who he doesn't know yet, but Mr. Hyde trample over a little girl.
yes, you see that shot in the comic as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Yeah. But like it's very much like I don't know how to describe it, but
Because eventually Jekyll goes away entirely, and by the second book, it's just Hyde.
yeah. There's two books. I don't know there was two books.
Well, there's first League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, then there's part 2, which
No, I'm
is.
talking about the classic Dr.
Oh
Jekyll
no,
and
no,
Mr.
no!
Hyde.
This is just in the comic.
Yeah,
I'm still
fair enough.
talking about.
Yeah, I would love to see that kind of an approach because in the Doug Ray direct-to-DVD Doug Ray Scott one, it's just like his eyes change and he's mean, but like it's not.
It's not a physical transformation.
Yeah, and it's not directed in a way that's interesting and it gets away from the points of the book. But I would love for him to take on a character like that. That would be interesting, and like it gives me hope that like I want more horror movies to be aspiring to be this because he doesn't pull his punches on the Hollywoodization of horror, which is like I'm going to give you a really tense fight scene in a hallway that is gruesome, but you love it.
Right.
Because you love, like, you go to horror because you love to be scared and you love to be
shocked and
shocked
everything.
and all things like that. So,
But
like,
this movie has their consequences, and the brutality is brutal and not cool. It's cool shot,
Yeah.
but it's just like, you know.
yeah.
I do like where we are in horror right now because I think more people have accepted an artisan approach to horror.
Yeah.
We are long gone from
Movies like Get Out and The Witch and
Midsummer and
Yeah,
things like that. Hereditary.
Even like movies like It feel they're a little more high-minded about how they approach their horror and stuff. Even though that's like definitely blockbuster horror, it has some of the tropes that
Well,
we come
even
to expect.
all the stuff Mike Flanagan's done, like
I haven't seen
Haunting of Hill House.
Oculus. I'm gonna
And I've
start
heard,
that.
yeah, Oculus 2 is absurdly good.
Yeah. Doctor Sleep, I think, might surprise you in the fact that it's not a horror movie, but it's still a good movie. There's some stuff that I feel like, oh, it has like a young preteen heroine. I'm like, it feels, I don't know
Again,
why,
like you said,
but it feels
YA.
like a young adult novel. But the stuff that's really great is like the Ewan McGregor stuff. There's a really great scene where he's with an old man who's afraid he's going to die, and he's so terrified. He doesn't know what death is, and it's just forever nothingness. And then you can feel Ewan McGregor getting tired of talking to him or getting like over it, and then he just uses his powers to talk into his mind, and he goes, "It's just sleep, peaceful forever sleep." And then the guy calms down, and he looks at like him
Because that's the thing that Danny does now is he aids the dying.
Yes.
That's why he's Dr. Sleep.
and it kind of changes his life, and like that's the stuff that I was like really like that.
Well, that's
Also,
all Stephen King, though. He wrote that book.
I know,
so,
I know.
yeah.
It's. I imagine it's quite faithful to his story. You do go back to the Shining Hotel in it at some point, and that's might be some of my less favorite parts about
Interesting,
it.
'cause that's all the fan service.
Yeah, but I
Does he also get that in Ready Player One?
yeah, oh yeah, that's true. I just really liked the fact that like it's such a like all the character stuff is so great.
But
You even meet the black dude from The Shining, Doc or whatever, the guy who first talks to Danny and says, "You have a shining in you."
Yeah,
or
you
whatever.
get to see Scatman Crothers.
I don't know if it's not the same actor.
No, because
but-
Scatman Crothers has been dead
Yeah.
forever.
But you see him again, and like that's just really. I don't know how to describe it, but it's a really cool movie, and it's a very visually interesting one.
I think
as
I might
well.
watch it tonight. But I think, like I said, right now we're in a good era for horror. We are far removed from Freddy. We are far removed from Jason. We are
And-
far removed from I Know What You Did Last Summer and Scream.
I'm very thankful for that.
Yeah, we
'Cause
are-
Those movies to me represent the parts that I'm like, this isn't.
It's just, and hey, I love Freddy Krueger. I love Jason Voorhees. I think the first Scream is a masterpiece.
I like Scream 1 and Scream 2.
Yeah.
they're all right, but
But
they're
eventually,
not
it's just popcorn '90s garbage. And
it's comfort food.
Yeah.
it might be satisfying in the interim, but it's not nourishing.
we are now in an age of horror where, thanks to people, honestly, like James Wan and Lee
How many
Winnell.
movies are in the Conjuring franchise?
I mean,
A dozen?
that's now the trash heap. Is now all the Annabelles and La Llorona. and everything.
Annabelle Creation is pretty good. I've seen it. It's by the guy who did Shazam. It's interesting.
Oh, okay.
Because he works. That guy works. The thing about him is that guy works great with child actors. That's what sells that movie, I think.
It's a whole the Blumhouse factory has brought so many interesting people out.
They really have, and they're like he's found a way. If you give a good guy $15 million to make a small horror movie, and it kind of just edges its way up to being better and better. And like this is to me like the highest echelon they've reached so far as a movie like this that I really enjoy.
Because we've now seen the end of the found footage trash heap. Like that's finally over. Like no one's making those anymore. Yeah, and overall, I recommend this movie. Of course I do.
Yeah.
It's a very accessible,
We didn't really-
enjoyable.
we didn't touch on how good Elizabeth Moss really is.
Oh yeah,
she's
Yeah.
great.
Again, she's almost too good for the
This movie.
the material because everyone else is kind of very muted.
Yeah, I can see that.
But also everyone's very real. Like it has to be very real at the same time. But it feels a little. It does feel a little basic. Like this is a suspense thriller. Everyone's kind of on the level. But Elizabeth Moss brings in a lot of power. She goes from being very, very anxious to outright just like terrified, and then trying to take back what has been stolen from her.
Yeah.
Again, I wish they would have hit the landing stronger with the themes that this movie was getting at, because I think it's important. But overall, of course I recommend it. It's a good, well-made, thoughtful, intense thriller take on a classic story.
I'd agree. I would buy it on Blu-ray if you're a horror fanatic.
Because it's visually great. It's well directed.
Oh yeah. If you are a horror fanatic, like you have to have this in your collection. And if you're just a person who like, even if you're a person who doesn't like horror, because Sarah doesn't like horror a lot either, but she still goes to see. It's weird. She says that, but she goes to see like almost all
the horror movies.
She went and saw Us with me, and like she went and saw Midsommar with me and stuff. So like, she sees all the big ones or whatever that come out, It Chapter 2 and stuff. But for this one, she was like this. She came out of this movie being like, this is as a lady, she resonated with this movie a lot, and she found Elizabeth Moss to be a character worth rooting for. So if you're like a person who doesn't really like horror, there might still be something in here for you.
Because in the end, like I said, this is beyond just a supernatural horror movie. This is about the horror of control and abuse. And I think in that regard, for the most part, they succeeded. In that.
Well, I don't have anything else to say.
No, we will have some more episodes coming out soon. We've got another.
We have a whole slew of bonus episode ideas for you guys, Star Wars ones, just movie topic ones. In general, we need, what we need to do? We need to bring back the blind date, where one of us picks a movie the other one hasn't seen, and then they have to watch it, and then we talk about that.
Cool.
We
That'd be a good
did
idea.
a few of those. I think I made Zach. The first one was I made Zach watch Man of Steel, and he deep sighed his way through it all. So that was fun for me. But I thought that would be a cool idea for us as well. We got a lot of stuff in the works, and we're just going to try to keep getting 2 podcasts out a month, first and the 15th, and bonus episodes scattered intermittently throughout.
And again, check us out on iTunes.
Yeah, we're on iTunes now. It's moving at a healthy clip. A new episode every week on iTunes for the next foreseeable future, really. This has been The Movie Date with Rob and Matt, a podcast for people who like movies but don't want to be smug about it. I've been Rob.
And I've been Matt.
And we will see you guys next time.
Take it easy.